Hello everybody and welcome back once again to Let's Play Suzerain, yes. So, here we are. I just got a glimpse of my character in the lower left of the screen. I had to chuckle. Doesn't he look like a president you could trust? Yeah. Anyway, we'll see how things fare as we progress onwards. But, in the last session, we ended with high drama, as MP Bernard Circus was shot dead at our inauguration ball. So, set off a few chain of events, has this little incident. Little incident, somebody's died, but hey. Take a quick look at the reports, the briefings. Anything of note? Well, as I said at the end of the last session, basically, it's, bomb attacks, BFF activity in the capital, weapons seized, rifles, machine guns, illegal firearms in a Communist Party office, Young Sword's youth wing leader dead after terror attack. I think you get the gist. Things have gone to pot. And violence, protests, everything's kicking off. The country is in a state of unrest. Pivotally, a cache found with Rumberg-made weapons, including 47 brand new KA-74s, were found in the basement of an abandoned house in Suzerain. That might be worth noting. Our dam is at maximum capacity. That's not a good sign. And, police overburdened. Not a good sign either. Police are struggling to cope with the unrest. Horton, in wider diplomatic news, are merely unhappy with the current existing trade deal we have, and Victor Smolak is wishing us all the best in handling the protests, in addition to, of course, warning us about the mountain pass that allows traitors of the state to escape into our country. Might want to keep an eye out, but anyway, there you go. That's basically lots of doom, lots of gloom, lots of things to sort out. In the newspapers, obviously, the headlines dominated by the death of Bernard Circus, apart from The Economist, which isn't bothered about that, bothered about economy. So talking about bailing out businesses as a potential route out of the recession. Murder, method of the past, and a farewell to Bernard Circus from the Radical, who were clearly very pro Mr. Circus. So there you go. Whistle-stop tour of the updates. We've got things to do. You know, security briefing, threats. Let's crack on. I arrived in front of the doors leading to the Situation Room. Today's security briefing was arranged in two parts, starting with internal matters and moving on to external matters after a short break. Hopefully we've had our coffee today. The Minister of Interior, Lilius Graf, and the Minister of Justice and Law, Nia Morgner, will join us for the first part, the Law Enforcement Briefing. For the second part, the Minister of Defence, Iosif Lancia, will join with a few high-ranking officials, including the Chief of the Armed Forces, Valken Kruger. I opened the door. Lucian, Nia, and Lilius rose from their seats. Sir? Let's begin. Always one to crack on with the briefings, our President. Not one to dither about. Let's just crack. I got things to be doing. Cigars to be smoking, drinks to be drinking. I don't want to be messing around with formalities. Let's begin. This is a very urgent matter. Everyone in the room sat down except for Lucian. He put on his glasses and went through the documents in front of him. Shortly after, he raised his head to address the attendees. Mr. President, ladies, we will kick off today's meeting with the internal security briefing. I am assuming everyone has already been over the agenda. We all have busy schedules, so without further ado, I will jump into our first topic. As we feared, the political atmosphere has worsened. The reports around the country indicate that tensions are rising as we feared. What is the status on the Bernard Circus investigation? I have received news this morning that the investigation into the murder of Bernard Circus has concluded. Ah. I'm eager to hear the details. After further investigation and testimonies, we have confirmed the motive and also the events leading up to the shooting. A few days prior, members of the Red Youth initiated a violent attack on a Young Swords local leader in Jen. We believe the Young Swords then called for revenge, leading to the death of Mr. Circus. Since he often spoke against the Young Swords and nationalist sentiments in the Assembly, he was a big target, not to mention his radical communist views. Ah. Well, clearly the Red Youth are to blame, since they have started this chain of events. They struck first, yes. It was obvious that there would be a retaliation. Lilius handed over the report and pointed at a highlighted section in the document. The investigation revealed a very troubling fact. The funding sources of the Red Youth have a clear link to United Quintana. Well, clearly this is proof that they are meddling in our affairs. Exactly. Several Red Youth members with ties to United Quintana have been detained, and the information extracted from them points to a preparation for a communist uprising in Sordland. It isn't unusual for the superpowers to influence other nations, but I think this case is a little far-fetched. The left lacks popular support in Sordland. Nia eagerly lifted her hand. I motioned for her to speak. I went over the report in detail. It would be wrong to jump to conclusions about a clear foreign interference yet. United Quintana has humanitarian and cultural ties with many countries, including Sordland. Yes. Well, maybe we shouldn't jump to conclusions immediately. We don't want to create a crisis. We're already suffering with unrest, shall we say. Nearly 3 decades ago, they funded General Ricard and tried to establish a communist dictatorship in our country. If it was not for Colonel Sol, we would have seen the real crisis. She took a sip from her glass of water and continued. Our police chief Carl Grieser has linked the funding channel to the United Quintana consulate in Benfi. As we all know, the enemies of Sordland are many, but we also have threats inside the country. Yes, we need to remain vigilant. If we give up essential freedoms to purchase temporary security, we deserve neither freedoms nor security. This is debatable, but yes, we know what more security and surveillance caused to this country under President Sol. Let's not forget that President Sol, God bless him, brought stability after a long period of bloodshed and chaos. But moving on, our highest internal threat comes from the estimated 20,000-strong Bluedish Freedom Front, led by the imprisoned Dulan Arg. They are a banned political organisation, now a militant force that is trying to incite racial violence. Are they supported by our Bluedish citizens? To some extent. Luckily they couldn't attract a wide audience of Blues, but they could potentially attract thousands if anti-Bluedish sentiment spreads in Sordland again. Lilius pointed to page 3 in the report. Our intelligence intercepted 2 crates filled with weapons close to the Rumberg border. They were filled with military-grade Ka-74s. We expect that more have been smuggled in. A group of Blues were caught with these guns at a checkpoint not far away. The governor of Berger, Felix Bronn, is already taking the necessary measures to counter the threat. Rumberg has been acting aggressively in the region for a long time. I'm not surprised that they would attempt to weaponize the Bludish people against us. This is worrying. Very worrying. Can we make any direct correlations between the BFF and Rumba? Not yet, but we have suspects that indicate such a correlation. This is grave news, but we must be careful not to stoke the fires of anti-Bludish sentiment. Unfortunately, Governor Bron is directly causing the tensions to increase with his increasingly anti-Bludish stance. I must remind you, Governor Bron is directly responsible for the arrest of Dúlan Ag, the previous leader of the BFF. It's true that his methods can be extreme at times, but it was his policies that kept the region peaceful over the last decade. He is misusing the powers given to him by Tarquin Sol. The insane authority of the governor is surely a root cause. It wouldn't be very difficult to revoke the special status of Berger under the current circumstances, Miss Morgana. The presidents no longer have the authority Tarquin Sol enjoyed. For now, yes, but with enough justification for it, it would be possible. Anyway, we will be discussing this at a later time. Yes, I am quite well versed in the special zone, actually. And this has always been the region of chaos and trouble, if you ask me. We must be careful. As you know, Berger was given a special status by Tarquin Sol after the full-scale uprising by the BFF against the Sordish government in 35. Those couple years were disastrous for Berger. Dúlan Ag and the BFF declared war on us, openly attacked our people, and occupied entire cities. It was a massive uprising, but I'd like to point out the longest time they were in control of a city was 2 weeks. I wouldn't call that an occupation. Despite the arrest of Dúlan Ag in 44 and the BFF ceasing its activities, the special status of the region were never revoked. Today, the special zone of Berger gives the governor insane amounts of authority. He was in trouble with the law before for not following the central government's authority. Unfortunately, Berger also has its own police forces directly commanded by Governor Bron. They are not part of my ministry and only cooperate when they are forced to do so. This is a problem. Even though our forces have the authority to serve in Berger, the special zone leaves the security of Berger mostly in the hands of the governor. That leaves my hands tied. Yes, I do believe that we must reverse this situation. It's absurd that the Ministry of Interior doesn't have full control over Berger security. As you have said yourselves, times have now changed. I agree. I have some ideas about it already, but we can talk about that at a later time. Nia gestured at Lilius. What is the second most important threat? It is the gang violence that is threatening the Nargis and Agland regions. 2 prominent organised crime families are at war, and the potential for bloodshed is real. And why can't we just arrest them? The primary reason is deception and corruption. They infiltrated several government offices and the police. That's how they can evade us. Well, I'll tell you something. They're playing with fire. I want them gone. For good. While I agree it would make Sordland a better place, it will not be easy. These gangs exist because corruption is so common in our country. They buy our police officers and slip by checkpoints. Lilius Graff sighed deeply. I shall be honest with you. With our current capabilities, we may not be able to prevent the further arming of separatists while maintaining order in Berger, Nargis, and Agland. If the law enforcement budget isn't increased, I can't be fully responsible for what happens. Our police units are spread thin as is. Yes, I'll give due consideration to increasing the budget. Clearly times are very tumultuous right now. We will rid our country from separatists and violent thugs if you do so. I wish you would stop using the word thugs, Lilius. The real problem is corruption. which is fueling the gang violence and is very likely the reason why these weapons were smuggled in. A higher budget could help us end that. Yes, well, excuse me for saying this, Miss Morgan, but these threats seem a bit more direct than a handful of bribes. They are, and they all need the attention they can get from our administration. Lilius and Nia were openly scowling at each other. Lilius turned back to her notes. Well, this concludes the topics for the internal portion. Thank you for the updates, Miss Graff, Miss Morgan. Yes, now let's move on, shall we? Thank you. Have a good day. Until next time. The 2-minuters left the room. We took a short break before continuing to the second part. Speaking of break, I have a cup of tea here with me, so I shall take a sip. And then we shall crack on with part 2 of the briefing. We'll clamp down on all this, don't you worry, folks. We'll have it sorted. Okay, right. Just powdered my nose, had a break, sipped my tea, sat down. Right, next. Feel like I'm a doctor in a surgery. Next. Upon invitation, Iosif Lancia, along with 3 high-ranking officials from the Ministry of Defence, walked into the room. One of the men was none other than General Kruger, the Chief of the Armed Forces. Iosif made his way toward the table, while the others stood by the door. Mr. President. Let's begin. Once again, eager to crack on. I brought General Kruger with me due to the escalation on our borders. General Kruger stepped forward and saluted. He had a strong jaw with sharp cheekbones. His tall stature, uniform and medals, combined with his deep and intense stare, made him look threatening. He was in his 70s, yet he had a bulky body that was a result of his commando training. Not only was he the second most decorated officer in Sordland, he was also the longest serving. I saluted him. He smiled at the gesture and bowed his head in respect. Iosif tapped his foot impatiently. He seemed uneasy with the presence of another high-ranking officer in the room. Gentlemen, thanks for coming to this significant gathering. Let's begin. Iosif and Valken took their seats at the table while the rest of the officers stood by the door. Mr. President, the situation at the western and northern borders towards Rumberg is very tense. We are observing deployments of divisions closer to our border. Rumberg has been acting increasingly expansionist in the past decades and also interfered in Agnolia, but now they have turned their sights on us. And what is your current strategy? Patrolling close to the borders with our border force and keeping Army Reserve divisions near. It seems like they want to increase the pressure both externally and internally. Mr. President, if I may. Go on. The picture is becoming clearer. The latest information from the interior about the weapon caches, and now there is an active military build-up close to our borders. The entire situation was analysed by our General Staff, and our prediction is a future territorial incursion by Rumberg. Yes, well, I completely trust in the General Staff. We will not let you down, Mr. President. The General Staff is composed of the smartest military individuals. I require an increase in the military budget to enlist more soldiers. Only then we can stand strong against our enemies. The enlarged armed forces will hold them at bay. Vulcan is right. We do need an increase in the military budget, although we don't see eye to eye on how exactly to spend it. That much we agree on. I have my concerns about Rumberg too. We need strong allies to withstand such a superior power. They are our nemesis. That is an understatement. Times are changing and war is coming, Mr. President. Whether we like it or not, we must be prepared. Do not forget that during the election you promised to focus on the military. I expect that word to be kept for the defense of our nation. I am a man of my word, Iosif. Fear not. Of course you are.
and that is why I follow you, Mr. President. The only way we can guarantee the national survival is through a more capable military force against Rumberg. Our country hasn't fallen to an invading force for 200 years. You cannot let it happen, Mr. President.
We should find regional allies like Valgsland or Lesbia to deter Rumberg. There are several options on the table.
If you ask me, Lucian, Sordland must be able to stand on its own 2 feet and be able to defend itself. We can't rely on the help of others. Who's to say they're going to lend a hand? Of the same mind, sir. We stand strong, as we've always done.
Everyone fell silent when a soldier entered the room and let Iosif Lanceia know that a call had come through from the ministry.
Excuse me, Mr. President.
He left the room to answer. A few minutes later, he entered the room again. His expression had changed.
Mr. President, there has been Rumbergian military activity close to the Narbel border. I just spoke with the local commander. Vulcan, we should go to the ministry and get further updates from our branches. Understood. Raising military readiness is the first call of action. If there is truly an extraordinary attempt, we will relay it to you immediately and wait for further orders, Mr. President.
Yes.
Go and show them the might of the Swordish armed forces. We will. You can be sure of that. Hail Sordland. Hail.
They saluted and left the room. Rumberg was already testing us, and the reports from the interior indicate interferences inside our borders. Communists, nationalists, bluish rebels, Rumberg expansionism. What was next? Sordland had always been a key piece in the chessboard of the global rivalry between Arcasia and United Contana, but in the recent years there was no such aggression from Rumberg. Not at these levels, at least. All it takes is one tiny spark to start the flames of war. The phone rang. Rumberg had decided to close their consulate in Leshaven. The buggers. The buggers, right. Close your consulate, did you? So we have an update here. Order, situation, nationwide revolt. The country is facing widespread violent protests as a result of recent events. Significant harm could be caused to the economy and stability. Well, that's something that needs to be dealt with, and we shall stamp it out. Diplomatic pressure, particularly from Rumberg. Don't you worry, Rumberg. We've got your number. Trust me. Right. In VSword, the United Contana Consulate has helped protesters, particularly Red Youth protesters. The diplomatic mission opened its doors and the Red Youth members escaped inside. Maybe Lilius's intelligence is quite correct. Who knows? In Azaran, we've got a rising Golkondism in the rural areas of the Berger region. Bluish Freedom Front and foreign proselytizers are suspected to be behind the sudden increase. Lots of recruiting going on through grassroots campaigns. Religious conversion, eh? And Arcasia develops the first intercontinental ballistic missile of significant power and range. Okay, papers. Sordland today. Rumours of an infrastructure project? Your rumours are correct, sir. Underhaul construction, once again #1. The #1 construction company. Might be worth bearing in mind for our upcoming project, perhaps. Gang violence continues. Narbel, dog-walking 15-year-old girl was shot. Indicative of the crisis going on right now. The real truth behind economic crisis. 1927, never again. talking about when all the tanks rolled in and the coups happened and all the bombs. Well, we'll see what happens. We need to stamp this unrest out, otherwise 1927 may well happen again. Geopolitical news. Rumberg has closed its consulate. We know that. We heard it. We got it hot off the press. The Rumbergian flag has been lowered overnight, and the diplomatic staff were expected to leave on Friday and Saturday. Many Leshaveners were shocked. The 120-year-old consulate closed. Deteriorating relations? You betcha. Right, time for dinner with the family. After a long day at the palace, I was finally home. I thanked Sergei and walked through the front gates, nodding at the two guards as I went by. Even as I turned the doorknob, I could hear Dina rushing down the stairs to greet me. I opened the door and there she was, standing in front of me with expectant eyes. "Papa, you're home!" "Ah!" Give her a lift off her feet, spun her around and give her a hug. I was trying to put the keys in the tray next to the entrance. She was growing fast. Lifting her up was no longer as easy as it once was. And then almost put me back out. "Oh, that's enough of that. You're a big girl now." Ooh. She started laughing. "That's right, I am a big girl now." I put her down and her expression turned serious. "Papa, are the bad men gone?" "Yes, your papa took care of everything." "Okay, Papa." Dina dashed down the hallway. "Mama, Papa's here!" Monica appeared next to the kitchen door. She was wearing an apron and holding a spatula in her hand. "Dina, what did I tell you? No running in the house." "Yes, Mama." Monica approached me and kissed me on the cheek. A tantalising smell wafted from the kitchen behind her. How was your day, dear? Gotta keep the wife sweet, you know what I mean? Terrific! I finally got to do some grocery shopping, just like old times, and I'm making your favourite. You mean... Yes, Lorsha. Lorsha was a Leshaven specialty, usually reserved for special occasions. A rich seafood stew with a heady garlic and paprika kick. It was absolutely my favourite dish, especially paired with kebbage, a potent unfiltered wine from Berger. Give her a kiss on the cheek. I just wanted to cheer everyone up a bit. Her smile faded and she lowered her voice so that Dina wouldn't hear, especially after what happened at the ball. I'm worried, Anton, for you, for the children, and for the country. Dina suddenly appeared next to us. Mama? Yes, sweetie? I'm hungry. We'll eat in just a minute. Will you help me set the table? Anton, can you tell Frank to come down for dinner? He's been sulking in his room all day. Monica started taking out the plates when I headed upstairs to fetch my son. Loud rock and roll music echoed down the hallway from his room. I caught a faint hint of cigarette smoke. I knocked on the door. There was no response. I knocked on the door again. There was still no response. Turn down that racket and open the door! The stereo in Frank's room clicked off. All right. He unlocked and opened the door. What do you want? Turn those records up louder next time, why don't you? Don't think the neighbours quite heard you. Frank headed downstairs to the dining room, and I followed after. The table was prepared and Monica was ladling food onto the plates. Come on, have a seat. It won't be as tasty if it's cold. As we started eating, the room went quiet. Monica's cooking was as delicious as ever, but I had the feeling that wasn't the reason nobody spoke. Monica was the first to break the silence. Say, did you know that they refurbished the grocery store? I don't know if you remember the owner. He's been there every day for the past 30 years. Can you imagine doing the same job for so long? What if you were president for 20 years, for example? 20 years? Well, why not? We could live like kings. Monica measured me with her eyes for a moment. Anyway,
The grocer really is a nice person. He threw in some extra vegetables with my... Frank suddenly slammed his hands on the table, rattling the plates. Monica, Dina and I stared at him. So, this is how it's going to be? We're just going to sit here like nothing happened? Dad, you could have been killed. Mom, you could have been... Everyone, all of us, could have died. Dina's lower lip started trembling. Monica put her hand on Frank's shoulder. And yet, we are still alive. For now, but how long until this happens again? Frank got up from his seat. Sit down, now! Frank took his seat again, scowling. I know it was a close call, but everything is under control. How? How is it under control? My security assured me that they have taken all the necessary steps. The same security that let a person get shot in front of the palace? Frank, listen to your father. If your father says we don't need to worry, then we don't need to worry. You have to trust him. Monica turned to me. We all have to trust each other. Things calmed down a bit at the table. We finished our food in silence. Frank got up first and retreated back to his room. Monica lifted Dina up and plopped her in front of the living room TV before returning to the table. She sat down across from me. Anton, he's still young. Well, he should feel lucky he has a father who cares about him. I never had that. He's scared, Anton, and frankly, he isn't the only one. Look, I promise, if there is truly any threat to this family, you will be the first to know. She got up, stood behind me, and massaged my shoulders for a moment before leaving me alone in the dining room. I sat alone at the table and drained my glass of cabbage. Had I been lying to Frank and Dina? Was the threat to my family truly over? Time would tell. Ping, ping, ping. Okay, let's go with the newspapers. Protests across Sordland. Yep, we've gathered that. Protests erupting. Red youth flags. Flying in most central cities. Protesters holding sit-ins, which were broken up by riot police with tear gas and water cannons. That's how you deal with them. Right, protests in Grooney. Again, regarding the assassination. We've got large rallies as well. Congregation of Red Youth members. Sit-in protests there too. The wrong economy, says The Economist. The government has made its decision to promote a planned economy, a decision which is based on flawed arguments of Solonomics. Blah-de-blah-de-blah. Arcasia, Lesbia, all capitalist countries thriving, apparently. But there is a disparity between the wealthiest and the poorest there. Political chaos. Casaro Kibana of the National Front Party called a rally to condemn communist influence from United Quintana and called the violent protesters as traitors to Sordland. On the other hand, the Labour Union of Sordland has gathered to condemn nationalist violence. Young Swords vandalised shops. NFP office burned. I mean, you're getting the picture, folks. It is basically unrest. Arvery, nationalists descending on the PFJP party. Militants fired shots at 5 people inside the Communist Party's local office, killing 4. It's just absolute carnage. With a capital C. Right, CSP. Spotlight on workers' rights. Not really top of our priority list right now. And Morella expresses condolences for Bernard Circus. We thank you kindly. React to the unrest. Call for restraint, visit affected towns, label all protesters as traitors, expand the police, or reject any plans. So, let's have a look here, shall we?
I mean, all protesters as traitors. And there's protesters from both sides here, so don't want to deploy recruits either. But visiting affected towns is probably I would say is the most effective methodology, and we do want to try to be seen to be effective. It's we're probably not best pleased with having to schlep around various towns, but sometimes these necessary evils for keeping up appearances are required. So we will indeed do that. We do want the unrest to stop ultimately. President Rain talks to protesters. You were seen talking to protesters and listening to the concerns. One in ear and out the other probably springs to mind. However, this sends a powerful message to Swordish citizens that the government is walking among them and listening to their problems. Indeed, we're listening. Or are we hearing, but not listening? That's the question. End of the day at the Maroon Palace. It was late in the evening. The Maroon Palace was finally getting somewhat quiet when I returned to my office at the top. I eagerly approached my chair and sprawled out on it. It had been an exhausting day, just like every day since I took office, but hey, it's the president's role, I suppose. We try to cut corners where we can, but still, nonetheless, still very busy. Oh yes, I poured a little whiskey for myself and had a sip. It felt like the best salve after a long day of work. I glanced downwards out the window and saw Sergei and the guards waiting for me by the main gate. I heard a couple of knocks on the door. My secretary Livia Suno entered. Mr. President, Mr. Tusk is here to see you. You had a meeting with the Lotherberg spokesman. I'm so sorry for not giving you proper notice. Do your job properly next time? Do you expect me to keep track of everything myself? You're right, Mr. President. All right, I probably made a mistake with my notes. It'll never happen again. But he's already here. What do you want me to tell him? After a moment, Mr. Tusk swaggered into the room. I'd met Sordland's most prominent businessman once or twice, but never alone. He had large jowls, blindingly shiny shoes, and the air of someone who was used to getting his way. Anything to drink, Mr. Tusk? Water? Whiskey? Cognac. Preferably from before you were born, sweetheart. I'll check the supply room. Livia backed out of the office, shooting me an apologetic look as she did so. Walter hung his hat up, which I could see was lined with mink. He fixed me with a long, hard stare, then broke into a toothy grin. Good evening, Mr. President. I'm here to congratulate you. We both sat down. My business partners and I wish you a successful term as the leader of our nation. Thank you, Mr. Tusk. I had no chance to say this at the ball with all the panic, but we are very much looking forward to working with you. Thank you. I'd like to build a profitable relationship between us. That being said, there are some concerns of mine and the people I represent, which I would like to take this opportunity to clear up. I'm listening. The ruined state of the economy in Sordland has influenced everyone. The recession hit all of us hard. Walter pulled out a box of cigars from his jacket. I had these bought from Lesbia, the best cigars in the whole continent. Would you like to try one? I grabbed one out of the pack. Walter lit it up with his large engraved lighter. Now we are talking. A man who knows pleasure and business. Walter grabbed himself a cigar and lit it up as well. We looked out at the city scenery as we both puffed away. I heard that you purchased stock from Armadine Industries in Arcasia. Smart buy. They are developing new gadgets that are going to be profitable. With risk comes reward. I expect a very good return on investment.
You have a keen eye for business. I will buy a couple of thousand shares too to expand my portfolio. Hope the investments pay off for both of us, President. His eyes wandered away for a moment. The assassination and the troubles between the left and the right are worrying, but the recession is the root cause of these issues. For us, it is worrying to see that you have decided to promote a planned economy. We need more government control to fix the economy, if you ask me. Do you really, though? Our government is already overburdened with managing several key industries, with a loss of efficiency. He leaned forward in his chair. The high-speed rail investment was a great decision. The business logistics will improve and boost the economy once finished. That is the intention. The right intention, for sure. We can be close allies. The group can help you get Sordland out of this recession, which will be the key problem to solve in your term and could even determine your re-election. Let's start with a gesture of goodwill. Soon, the investment project contract will be awarded to one of the three main contenders. He pulled a cheque out of his pocket and slid it towards me on the table. My personal bank details were listed on it with a deposit of 500,000 Sordish Ren, ready to be transferred. This was 6 months of a president's salary. If the contract was somehow awarded to Underhall Construction, they would not only work hard and deliver, but also do it on time. What do you think, Mr. Rain? Wouldn't that be good? He put his index finger on the cheque. There was a noise by the door. Olivia Sooner was standing there, holding a tray with a bottle and 2 glasses. I'm so sorry, Mr. Tusk, but all I could find was a 1942 Sivini. I hope that's acceptable? She quickly put the tray on the desk and walked out. Tusk eyed her as she left. Remind me to visit your office more often. Now, where were we? Oh, do we have a deal? Not yet, actually. We both know you can do better than that amount, Mr. Tusk. You are right about that. I'll make this my final offer. He pulled out another cheque with a smile. This time, 1 million Sordish Ren was listed on the piece of paper. Better. I accept. He grinned and let out a laugh. The cheque was right between his hands. He pulled his hands back and I took the cheque. This deal will also show to the group that the administration hasn't left the private sector behind. I'm very happy we came to an agreement today, Mr. Tusk. Likewise, President Rain. It was a pleasure doing business with you. Oh, and before I forget, a final token of my gratitude. Walter pulls a box of cigars out of his pocket. The label reads, Varo Benvenuto. Some of Lespia's finest, made by true craftsmen in the fabled city of San Verlon. You should visit someday, should the opportunity arise. We will be in touch. Walter stood up, grabbed his jacket, and shook my hand before making his way toward the door. He smiled before closing the door and leaving. I gathered my things and prepared to finally head home. As I walked out, I noticed Livia still there, covering up her typewriter for the evening. If I may be so bold, Mr. President, did you accept his offer? That is absolutely none of your business. Of course, sorry to intrude. She and I took a moment to look out over the lights of the city, before heading to the elevators. Yes. So, bit of personal wealth added. Nothing like a bit of bribe money to influence a decision. Lovely. Right, okay, we've got 3 things here. Meeting with Mr. Caronti, economic relief plan,
And we have a report about the local police working with nationalists. Yes. Corrupt police officers, you say? No chance. Right. Ministry of Defence reports the situation along the border is getting tense. Rumberg's Southern Army was sighted training close to our borders and did not respond after we issued a radio message. Perhaps they need more than a radio message. A stronger, sterner message perhaps is required here. Grand Duchy of Pales. Still having issues with Riesia over the gas fields. And in other news, in the newspapers, Kibana suggests expanding executive powers. This is going to be interesting because we're working with Kibana this time. We didn't work with Kibana last time, so some of these might be a little bit different from my previous playthrough. But he suggests that the new constitution should expand executive powers, adding fuel to the debate over the possibility of reforming the constitution. He wants strong leadership. The current constitution suggests the division of executive power between the cabinet and the president, who has no immunity before the calls for acts of treason and unconstitutional behaviour. In the system suggested by the NFP, the president would have absolute immunity, and it is the president who would chair the cabinet. Ooh, interesting. He wants us to have more power. I can't say I disagree. The PFJP proposal had suggested that the president should have no presidential decrees, might result in the abolishment of the assembly and take the country to an early election. Ooh. Anyway, foreign gas and engineer salaries under scrutiny. Basically, they're getting paid higher wages than the Swordish counterparts. In the Shaven, Labour Union of Sordland, corporate social responsibility in Narbel. Reform demands gain popularity. Demands for reform are gaining more popularity than ever. You'll be getting a reform, alright. Maybe not in the way that you want it, but you'll be getting something. I don't think it'll pass the Assembly, what we're going to propose here, but you never know. Stranger things have happened. Workers' Party Solidarity March. Pro-minority workers of Bludia Party rally in the Bludish majority city of Erzaren. Attracted a large audience. Mansoon Lek speaking. Bludish citizens targeted by young swords during their peaceful protests to support Bernard Circus. Oh dear. The violence continues. Right. Economic relief plan. So, Simon Hall has put forward a relief plan to mitigate the economic hardships that are being felt. We could provide stimulus checks for people in need, or we could bail out businesses under serious financial strain. Alternatively, we can say, you know what? We're not going to enact any of that. No, we've got other ways that we can help the economy. The people and the businesses are going to have to look after themselves. Bailouts and handouts. What the hell is this about? Not on my watch, sir. Right, monetary inaction. Without the stimulus fund needed, many households and businesses are filing for bankruptcy. Oh dear. Oh dear. Right, so we're at 48 minutes, so we'll do these two, and that should call it a day for this session, because we are approaching the hour mark now. Finalisation of the L1 railway contract. This shouldn't go on for too long, because hey, we know where we're going with it. We arrived in Anrika by train. After being greeted by crowds of cheering citizens and local government officials, we headed to the City Hall. We were here for a significant meeting about the L1 project. Several construction companies sent their representatives to the City Hall. Gus was first to arrive. He greeted me with a heartwarming smile. Hello, Mr. President. Good to see you again. Appreciate you taking up my offer on the stock investment. Armadine is a very promising corporation, and if everything goes well, you will make solid returns. Thanks for arranging the opportunity, Gus. I'll treat you to a 30-year-old Earlroy Maroon if they make solid profits. My pleasure, Mr. President. I'm looking forward to that Earlroy Maroon already. Simon Hall joined us. After settling down, we moved on to discuss the details of the L1 railway project. I came by train yesterday and was a little uncomfortable.
Besides starting our economic recovery, this project will make the journey here much more pleasant, Mr. President.
That is a given, but we'll also see improvements in everything from logistics to growth. You made the right choice for sure. I trust your economic plan, Simon. Glad to hear that. We should be able to slow down the recession if we finish this project successfully. I'm sure we will. According to your document, many citizens will be employed because of business expansions. Failure is not an option. You're right. We need to work together and think things through. Our economic revitalisation plan is set to be a success. Failure is indeed not an option. Simon searched for the documents he was holding and found the one he was looking for. I have the overview of the companies here. Sword Estate, Underhall, Taurus. I reviewed the listed corporations. I also wrote down some notes and ideas. Which corporation should we talk about? Underhall, please. The real estate and construction giant was founded in 1925 and expanded during the economic boom of the 30s. Picking this corporation would go against our planned economy policy. The CEO of Underhall is Chris Shah, the mayor of Conriat. He sold half of his shares a few years ago, but seemed very eager about the L1 bid. I had the chance to work with Underhall Construction in Hallsword. They took several contracts for the central station renovation and excelled at it. How was your experience? Out of all three, this is a company I can trust. They work hard, long and fast to accomplish their contracts. They will get this done if we give it to them. I'm not so sure about trusting them with such a big contract, especially after certain issues surrounding the treatment of their workers, but at least they have worked on several mega projects and always delivered on time. Well, we do need to be able to trust the corporation. This would be a base requirement. I think their capabilities are very suitable for the L1 railway project. They worked on 2 infrastructure projects in Gelsland and 1 in Greater Hallsword that were worth 2 billion ren in total. Underhall has specifically mentioned their solid track record and highlighted that they do anticipate to go over budget, but that they will finish on time. Well, I read the papers. I know my stuff. I think the Underhall contract, the Underhall company rather, is one that we can rely on to get the job done. I don't need to hear about the other 2. I've settled on the Underhall construction. Thank you very much. Simon signed a certain section of the dossier and fixed his glasses. Some in the Lotherbert group will be pleased. The contract will be awarded to Underhall Construction. You made the right choice. I can tell from my experience that we will be very satisfied with this company. The company will be notified today, and construction work will begin immediately after. Great news! My expectations are that the grand opening ceremony will be late next year. It will be a pleasure to celebrate together. For now, I'll return to my duties and visit some foreign partners in Rhesia. See you soon, Mr. President. Thank you. This concludes the meeting. The meeting ended, and we spent the remainder of the day attending events in Anrika. It was very refreshing to attend cultural dance events and hear the traditional Swordish music of the region. Good old-fashioned knees up. Right, government budget decreased by 2. Construction begins for high-speed railway. News travels fast round here, right? Underhall Construction has been awarded a 2-year contract for an extensive infrastructure project. Underhall said it could build the line at a much lower cost, according to a letter seen by The Economist, but the Interior Minister Graff had warned letting Underhall would be extremely questionable. I'm sure, well, they better do it. Otherwise, Mr. Tusk will be in contact. Right, Mr. Caronti. Meeting. Our motorcade headed to the meeting location, set by Marcel Caronti. I had only my most confidential and trustworthy team members with me. After a few hours of driving along the River Eskel, we took a turn before entering Conriat. The darkness started setting in as we drove up to a hill. I looked outside. I could see giant stadium lights on the hilltop far away in the distance. It looked like a massive complex.
We are nearing our destination.
We arrived and the big iron gates of the country club opened. It was huge and outright extravagant. The main building, inspired by lesbian architecture, was illuminated from all sides. It was rather chilly. I was approached by Peter Vecton and Lucien Gallard.
I hope the journey was comfortable. The location is very remote. It's a rather exclusive country club for people who value their privacy.
We entered the main building. After opening the marble engraved wooden door, we were greeted by two tall women. The receptionist led us to the meeting room upstairs. Marcel was standing by the window looking outside at the beautiful complex. He turned around to have a quick look at us. He was a strikingly handsome man with well-groomed hair. He walked toward me with his hand reached out for a handshake. I shook his hand. He had a firm grip.
It is such a pleasure to meet you in person, Mr. Caronte. I appreciate your efforts to reach out and establish a mutually beneficial friendship. Thanks for hosting us. I admired your father very much. May he rest in peace.
Welcome. Your kind words have touched me, Mr. Vice President. He was indeed a great man.
Please accept our condolences. We are indeed saddened.
He would have been very happy to hear this from you, Mr. President. However, it's time to look forward. Let's talk about our bright future. Let's have a seat. Marcel gently pointed at the seats. We sat down around a gigantic table. Before speaking, he knocked on wood. The past months have been tumultuous, to say the least. I'm glad you and your family were unharmed at the shooting. The whole incident must have been a shock for the kids. They aren't used to what we lived through back in the late 20s. I still remember when my father took us out of the country, when it became too dangerous in Conriat. Yes, they were startled, but important thing is they are safe and sound. Of course, that is all that matters. No family should suffer from tragedy ever again. We've had enough of that. Well, I am known to be a straightforward person, so let me get to the point without wasting your valuable time. It was during the Alfonso campaign when I was struck by what you have done within the party. Marcel started to look at one of the paintings at the wall. We continued to look at Marcel. Marcel pointed his finger at me. You said we will transform this nation, Mr. Rain. My conglomerate has a way of doing things, and I don't want them to change. So I want to cooperate with you. Keep going. You might have the people's support now, Mr. President, but what happens when you make mistakes? Everybody makes mistakes. What's that supposed to mean? Let's hear his point, Vice President. Being a president in this country means having many enemies. Enemies that would resort to anything to bring you down. Let's say these enemies cause a scandal or leaked sensitive information from the administration. These would be destructive when they were released. If they were released. Continue. Assume that the articles would actually protect your integrity no matter what. Try to imagine how up to 5 million people I reach will not lose faith in you. And what do you want in return? I want two things, Mr. President. Number one is a guarantee from you that the Rain administration won't meddle in HOS affairs no matter what happens. Number two is a simple gentleman's favour for the future. Let me provide my services to you first, and I'm sure you won't disapprove when the time comes. An interesting proposal. Not just interesting, but necessary. You surely know that this is a win-win situation. The media will be on your side, strengthening your position. It will also protect my business operations throughout the changes this country will see.
We have a deal.
Happy to hear that.
You can contact me personally through this number. As soon as you know that a story against you will break, please call me, and it will be taken care of. I hope you will uphold your end of the bargain as well. I shook his hand. Marcel put his second hand on mine. We will meet again. Goodbye. Thank you for your time, Mr. Caronte. We returned to Hallsword.
Oof. Media bias. So we have told Lucian to manipulate our own media, and now we have also got media manipulation through Mr. Caronte, which means that we have a media bias. Significant challenge faced by the media due to organised interference from both the state and private organisations. Oh, whatever do you mean? Kizaru Kibuna demands emergency to be called to address the increasing political violence in the country. He said, without a declaration of emergency, Sordland will be destabilised and the integrity of the country would be damaged even further. Funeral of Bernard Circus. Of course, we will do our presidential duty and attend. So as we start the next session, that will be our opening move. We shall attend the funeral of Bernard Circus. Right, there you go, folks, just over the hour mark. So next time we attend the funeral and take on further challenges that will throw themselves our way. But hey, look at us. We're a cool dude. We've got it covered, I'm sure. Until next time, I'll see you soon.